r/AskReddit, who is the rudest celebrity you've ever met? Benicio del Toro. He was having lunch at the table next to me and my friends. He must have seen us talking about him because he stood up, came over to our table, sat down, and ordered a bunch of food. He ended up spending a half hour talking with us. Then he paid the bill, tipped well, took some pictures with us, and left. He's the only celebrity I've ever met, so technically he qualifies at the rudest. I haven't met many, but Lenny Kravitz stayed at the hotel I worked at. He had the hotel sign an agreement that the staff were not to look at him or talk to him. Snoop Dogg was cool. He left a bunch of booze and weed behind in his suite. The housekeepers got a bunch of top shelf hooch and weed after he left. About 10 years ago I worked for an airline and some flights were cancelled due to weather. I got a call and this lady said, "I can't believe this is happening to me. I'm a celebrity. My name is Tova Feldshuh. I'm a celebrity." She literally said this 20 times. I got a manager on the line while she begrudgingly went on hold and relayed the info and that this was a celebrity. I stayed on the line while the manager had to explain that the flight's cancellation was for everyone's safety and nothing could be done about this. She was so rude. After we got off the phone with her, we looked her up and she was in a couple episodes of Law and Order, I think. She was recently on Walking Dead and I freaked out when I recognized her name in the opening credits. Anytime she appeared on screen I had to say, "She's a celebrity. I can't believe the zombie apocalypse is happening to her. She's a celebrity." Eminem. I was in Denver once and I was waiting for an autograph with my little brother. It was really cold and we waited for like 3 or 4 hours. He just said no. William Shatner said he would give me an autograph in Hawaii when I was about 10. He said, "Let me get a pen." Got in his limo and drove off. I'm usually too inarticulate to talk to celebrities. I did stay in a hotel room next to Mark Wahlberg over 10 years ago. He and his friends were extremely loud and listened to 80s rock music all night and never slept. It wasn't rude, exactly, just annoying. Alec Baldwin held an elevator door for me once and was the only celeb I've encountered to acknowledge my existence, so he was the nicest by default. I was in Las Vegas airport on a layover. I was reading Give Me the Damn Ball by Keyshawn Johnson. I was 14 or 15 at the time. Behind me at the airport convenience store, Keyshawn Johnson. 14-year-old me is super excited. He just signed with the Cowboys and I was a huge Dallas fan. I quietly said, "I'm a big fan, and I'm reading your book," from behind big sunglasses. He looks at me and says, "Leave me the fuck alone." I was crushed. In a moment of hate I screamed, "It's Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson," and walked away. By contrast, I watched a Packers/Vikings game with Mike Ditka at JFK Airport and he was awesome. Tim Duncan, former basketball player for the San Antonio Spurs. I met him at a Walgreens pharmacy in San Antonio. I was trying to get batteries but he was getting batteries too. He was in my way, so I said, "Excuse me, could I just get through really quick?" He stopped me mid-sentence and said, "Nah, I don't take pictures, just let me do what I gotta do." "My bad. I'm just trying to." "Hey, look, I don't want to take pictures right now, so just stop." He left. I got my batteries. Bam Margera showed up in Seattle once to film an episode. Talked a lot of shit to the wrong local skater. I watched Bam get knocked out by said local. One of the funniest things I have ever seen. My wife worked at a hotel for many years and met literally every major celebrity you can think of. She said Snoop was the coolest person she ever met and Bill Clinton was the biggest douche, even though I find it hilarious. My wife was walking outside back into the hotel, saw Bill and stared until she smashed herself in the face with a tree branch. Bill started laughing so hard he was having a hard time standing. The Secret Service ran over to help her and Bill, laughing so hard he could barely talk, told them to leave her because they had to keep walking. Amazingly hilarious. I saw Seth Rogen in an elevator once. I nodded to him and he nodded back. He was very friendly, but he's the only celebrity I've met, so I guess that makes him the rudest by default. Randy Jackson. He was invited to a telethon hosted by a hospital for children with severe disabilities, where my little sister lived until she passed away. Whenever the cameras were off, he would hide in his hotel room and seemed disgusted with the kids. Didn't want anything to do with them. When the cameras were on though, he was all smiles and hugs. It was so disheartening and disappointed. Almost 10 years ago and I still remember it so clearly. I met Aaron Hernandez twice. I used to work at a bar in Hartford he frequently went to. Talked to him both times, Was the nicest celebrity I ever met. Just wanted to hang out and have fun. He killed a few people then killed himself in jail when he had a daughter. I'd say that is pretty rude. My dad is a pilot and he frequently deals with celebrities. His company has all the staff sign NDAs, but my dad usually doesn't even know who the celebrities are unless they've been in the news. He said that Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban are incredibly rude to their own staff. Personal assistants were terrified of them. John Goodman came into my store once. I called him Mr. Goodman and he said, please, Mr. Goodman is my father, call me John. Talked to me for like 10 minutes, told him he was fucking awesome in flight, and then he left. So not rude at all. He was a very pleasant and funny person, but he's the only celeb I've met, so I guess he qualifies. Eric Roberts was a guest at a small, local comic convention. Thought it would be cool to get a signed pic of him as the master. He pretended people weren't there until they paid his manager $50. My wife's parting shot as we walked away. Loved your work on Celebrity Rehab. I met Bill Murray when he was getting ready to film Groundhog's Day outside of some local athletic gear store. I was like 9 at the time and I held my hand against my head in amazement at who was walking next to me. He took one look at me and said, hey kid, got a headache? Take an aspirin. Good times. My parents often tell the story of when we met James Spader at a Mexican restaurant. At the time I was a baby and, as babies do, I picked up a chip and handed it behind me to James Spader. He then looked up confused and said in his James Spader voice that baby handed me a chip. To be fair, it wasn't rude. We would all be confused if strange babies tried to hand us chips. Sendil Amitabh Ramamurthy, the doctor from Heroes. He was not rude at all, but he was kinda sketchy. He came into my store asking about international data plans. I didn't recognize him and he slowly began to admit that he was an actor. He kept creeping around the subject like I was going to be a fanboy because he's such a big shot and I was going to tell all my paparazzi friends. I was like, neat, but again, he was not rude in the slightest. He may have just been trying to be humble and I would respect that, but it wasn't really coming across that way. Quite the opposite. I met Joe from Impractical Jokers in Grand Central. That dude was the fucking man. Murr was deep-throating a hot dog so I didn't want to bother him. Kris Jenner. I worked for a Vespa dealer in southern CA around 2010. She bought a scooter and I drew the short straw and had to deliver it to her Hidden Hills home. I knocked at their door and no sooner did her assistant open it, I hear Kris screech from the second floor, "Do not let him in here." In her Cruella de Vil-like voice, she repeated herself so loudly that I could hardly understand what her assistant was telling me from 2 feet away. I said that is fine, as if I wanted to linger around there any longer than necessary. Just tell me where to leave the scoot so I can get out of here. She says out back. The garage should be open. Upon getting to the garage I see someone with a dustbuster, cleaning the floorboard of a Jeter's Porsche. I make my presence known and out pops Kris Jenner. Since my douche of a boss had the same car, I knew a little about it and we talked cars for a bit. After which, he invites me into their house for some water. I was giddy with excitement as I knew Kris would be livid at the sight of me in her home. Sure enough, as Bruce was showing me the family Christmas photo and explaining how Lamar had to be photoshopped into it, Bitchface came storming down the stairs with a look of rage on her puss. Bruce introduced me to her by name, which was cool. After having enough of my being there and my shit-eating grin, she stormed off back to her upstairs lair. Bruce had no idea about what she told her assistant prior and that made my day. I don't care what Bruce/Catelyn is up to these days, but he, then, she, now, was very kind and down to earth at the time. Kris is a total bitch. DL, doctor, delivered a scooter to Kris Jenner. She screamed about how I was unwelcome in her home. Bruce, unbeknownst, invited me inside for water. Bitch was fuming about it. Edit, he or she. Chad Gray, singer of Mudvayne and Hell Yeah. I was in an autograph line where you had to buy the album at the show to be in the line back in 2005, at the peak of Mudvayne's success. This kid was in line in front of me, maybe 19 years old. He gets to his turn and says, "Hey man, I've spent every free dime I have to see you guys when you're in the area since before your first album. I don't have much, but I love you guys so much. I saved all year to buy a festival ticket because of the meet and greet opportunity. It would make my dreams come true to take a picture with you guys," and takes out a shitty disposable camera. The rest of the band starts moving to take a picture when Chad tells him no fucking way and directs security to confiscate the camera. The year prior, a kid asked Cradle of Filth for a picture. The security guard moved in to confiscate the camera, and Danny stood up quickly, yelled at the guard to stop, and said we tour this fucking country once every 2 to 3 years and you're going to tell a loyal fan who paid money to meet us that he can't have a fucking picture. You're taking the picture now, and you're going to take it enough times that we are sure he will have a perfect shot. Definitely polar opposite ways a band can handle the same situation. I met Jimmy Carr in Dublin on the street. He came out a shop door as I was walking by. I said to friend, "Is that Jimmy Carr?" Which he heard. He then took out his phone and pretended to talk to someone in a fake leprechaun Irish accent and speed walked down the STA. Let me start by saying I'm a bit of a troll IRL, so this celeb and I got along pretty well. deadmau5, ETD Pop 2009, lots of trendy newer rave goers, so they had no idea what he looked like without a mask. Spotted him walking around alone through the lobby, so I pointed him out and said, "You're the Mau5 guy." He put up his finger to his mouth to signal me to keep quiet. He approached me and we start shooting the shit about the crowd, how dumb a lot of people are, how he puts himself into music, etc. Then we hear some group of, what I assume were, kids talking about how they can't wait for deadmau5, pronounced it properly. He turns around and acts like a fanboy noob pronouncing his own stage name wrong. OMG, I can't wait for deadmau5 too. I love his song, know that one song. He smiles at me and leaves. Chevy Chase saw him at a hotel and as a small 8 to 9 year old who liked the vacation movies and asked for his autograph. He went off on me verbally and then when my dad came over he went off on him for something fucked up like not raising me right or some shit. Dude's a straight asshole mid-level celebrity in the 80s for a second. Busts Rhymes came into the jersey shop I managed in Atlanta and got pissed off that I didn't have a hat in his size. He called me a dumb fuck, which hurt because I was a huge fan of his going way back to Leaders of the New School. Same store. Tyler Perry said he would buy me and sell me after I told him that the on-field 5,950 Yankee hat was dark navy blue and not black, even though he demanded a black Yankees hat like they wear on the field. Snoop Dogg, Michael Vick, Terrell Owens, ESP Terrell Owens, and Birdman were cool as fuck. He wasn't super rude, but I had a weird experience with Gary Coleman. When I was 12 or so, my dad scooped my brother and I up and told us we were going to play mini golf, no pun intended, with Gary Coleman. This was 20 years ago, so he hadn't been in anything in a long time and my brother and I had no clue who he was. My dad drives us to Mulligan's in Torrance where we meet some of his friends and Gary Coleman. I'm surprised my dad didn't prime us with some information about him to make sure we wouldn't say anything awkward about his height. But I guess he assumed we knew who Gary Coleman was. We got to the front desk and a weird jokey conversation ensues between Gary and the front desk lady wherein he tries to get some free golf. It doesn't work out, so we grab our scorecard and head to the first hole. Gary played golf like he was angling for the Stanley Cup. He didn't keep score, didn't stay with the rest of the group, didn't count his strokes at all. He just kept planting and whacking his ball into each hole as if the point of the game was just to get your ball in there before anyone else. My dad and my brother and I played a regular game, and when we came back to return our clubs, Gary was in the arcade playing Cruisin' USA. We said goodbye and that was our whole experience with Gary Coleman. I guess it could be considered rude that he tried to haggle for his round and didn't play with the group, but I didn't get the impression that he meant any disrespect by it. He seemed like he was having a good time. My mom was a waitress in the Dallas area at the early days of wrestling when the WWE was still the WWF. Wrestlers after a show would come to a restaurant and eat there cause it was close to the venue they performed at. She meet a lot of old school famous wrestlers before it was popular. Apparently the Ultimate Warrior was a real asshole who never tipped. That's the only one she didn't like. Just to turn the tables a bit, an old work friend of mine was rude to none other than John Lennon. My friend was about 14 at the time and was best friends with Julian Lennon at a private school in North Wales. John would occasionally ring to see how Julian was doing, etc. On this one occasion he was on the phone when my friend was there and asked to speak to his son's best friend. My friend wouldn't come to the phone and said he was fine thanks. Eventually he relented, gets on the phone. Lennon asks him, "Why didn't you want to speak to me?" My friend replies, "I'm not a fan. I prefer ABBA." Lennon replies, "Oh, put Julian back on." Bo Jackson and Chili Davis wouldn't sign my baseball when I was 8. There was nobody else around and they refused. Fucking pricks. Pierce Brosnan saw him loading his car up at a farmer's market in Santa Monica. Walked up to him and told him I was a big fan. I didn't ask for a picture or anything. He got into his car and as he was backing up he told me to fuck right off. Maybe I was in the wrong for walking up to him, I was just excited. Dan Aykroyd from the Blues Brothers. He had an extraordinarily high opinion of himself. I've met lots of actors, and some were nicer than others, but he was the only rude one. Peter Dinklage and I exchanged dirty looks at the airport, though he may have been reacting to my grumpy face cause I was in a grumpy mood waiting for my flight to board. I was an extra on X-Men: Days of Future Past. They were all nice. Jennifer Lawrence was the one that was the more meh with other people. I don't blame her too much. Peak Hunger Game popularity at the time, I get it. She was probably afraid people would try to always give her too much attention. However, the other actors didn't care about that. The nicest ones by far were Hugh Jackman and James McAvoy for what I saw. For McAvoy, one of my friend was one of the extras right behind him in a scene, and we were shooting 14 hours a day and cooking 40 degrees enclosed green screen bordered set in bright sunlight. We were running in high heels and wearing winter jackets. Basically a hellish day. And we couldn't sit anywhere. Well, McAvoy saw my friend wasn't doing right and he let her sit in Professor X's chair and have a bit of his water bottle. And with that said, the dude would just talk and chit-chat with everybody, despite the very strict non-conversation with actors contract we signed. He's just so chill. Hugh Jackman literally signed autographs in between shots and high-fived a bunch of people all the time. Michael Fassbender told all set workers passing by him after a very long day of work battling in water to have a nice day. I was a huge fan of his at the time and it made my whole year at that point. Fucking Peter Dinklage was dancing disco during the heatwave day to cheer people up. Samuel Jackson was walking around NYC around 17 or 18, and who do I see in the corner of my eye? But Mace Windu himself, Kango hat and all. I was nervous about going up to him, but I proceed to watch a young woman go up to him, show him her headshot, and take a picture with him. After he does this, I have the confidence to strike, so I stroll up and ask, "Are you Samuel Jackson?" And he is like, "Nah," so I proceed to ask, "Are you sure?" "I'm pretty sure you're Samuel Jackson," and he says, "Nah, you got me confused with someone else," and walks away. I was a massive fan before, and now I will always associate him with that memory. Well, since plenty of people are mentioning non-rude celebrities they've met, I met Dave Grohl about 4 years ago coming out of a show. I happened to be passing by after said show and we made eye contact for a split second. To my great surprise, he said hello, asked me if I liked the show, where I'm from, and even my musical interests, etc. We talked for a few minutes, I hugged him and we got a picture together. Fuck, that man is beautiful. I used to work in a studio that had pretty popular artists stopping into work. The absolute worst was P. Diddy. Dude was a raging asshole to me and every other person working. Anytime I see his face I have to try and refrain from spitting on it. Peter Mayhew aka Chewbacca. I accompanied my friend to a Comic-Con, whose hobbies include getting autographs and photos of celebrities. He was very short with us and didn't care we were fans at all. He interrupts my friend in the middle of complimenting him for his work, stating the costs of a photo and an autograph. Fine. We ask if we can take a photo instead of one of his photos he's selling, and he tells us we'll still pay the full price of one of his photos. Also fine. As my friend goes to walk around the table to stand side by side, he shouts at us to stay on the other side of the table. So we try our best to not look insulted, and take a super awkward picture of an annoyed Mayhew and my friend trying to lean back to make it look like they are posing for a fan pic. We try to thank him right after, but he brushes us off as soon as we hand him the cash. Dick. In contrast, we met Margot Kidder aka Lois Lane. She was super nice and even let us take pictures pretending to be flying with her like in the movie. And it was her suggestion, too. Kristen Stewart. I was waiting with friends outside of a pool hall for an Uber when Kristen and her girlfriend come walking out of the building laughing all loud. We naturally glance over and move out of their way. Then she comes up to us and says what? With her arms out like she's ready to brawl. Then they walk away laughing again. We didn't even realize who she was till they were walking away. She should really be careful who she talks to like that. Someone might actually go for the punch. Idina Menzel was set to perform at the place I worked in college, very small venue of devoted fans, because let's face it, who else would go see her? She came on 3 hours late and had very specific food items/demands for her green room and was extremely rude to everyone that worked at the facility. This is a huge facility and just one venue among larger ones that have hosted much more prominent acts/stars. I've met Chris Martin from Coldplay. I'm not sure if he was having a bad day, but he was really standoffish and cold. Not in a shy, introverted way, but he was legitimately completely disinterested in talking to me or anyone around him trying to speak to him. This was at a VIP thing that some people paid hundreds of dollars for. I've also met Jeremy Irons and Mac DeMarco. Both of them were equally bubbly and friendly.